You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick, and thanks for joining us today. I'm excited, maybe because our background is somewhat similar, but I know you're going to share a lot of interesting behind-the-scenes information. So we have Debi Corrie, before I go too far, with us today. We're going to talk about her journey and how you help businesses, especially, well, any size, but small businesses, get in there, and how do you look at the non-sexy things, you know, the cash flow optimization, the scaling, all the things that are necessary to grow the business and success, but maybe are sometimes an afterthought until you step in. So owner, creator of Acumaxum, CFO, strategy company. You have written books, been part of anthologies, writing books. You speak, you share all sorts of technical information with everybody out there working on their businesses and accounting and everything. So many Titan 100, so many different awards, NBC, CBS News, that too numerous to say. So what did I miss out on?
I think not much, really.
Is it weird to hear you summarize?
It's so strange to hear you summarize, because I remember when I was younger or when I was just getting started, I would hear these people with all these accolades and awards, and I was like, oh, I want to be that person one day. And now people are like, okay, and Debi's won this and written a book and done that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm one of those people. So I think it's really interesting because everybody's journey to get to where they're going or where they want to be, I think is different. And I'm just an ordinary person, and that's what I love to talk to people about. There was nothing extraordinary about me. I just had a lot of grit. And I knew what I wanted. I knew how I wanted to help people, but it was a whole journey to get there. And so I love to share the journey because you'll hear me talk a lot about failure. And I'm a big believer in failure, because if you're failing, you're taking risks. And all failure is what you learned along the way on your journey so that you can be successful.
You're jumping into all of the amazing learning, growth, development things that we're going to get into today. I was trying to furiously scribe some notes to come back to, which I'm sure we'll get back to there anyway. But if I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, Acumaxum, we're strategic CFO company, and you're going to teach me or help owners with cash, profits, scaling the business. And I've been in accounting. So what is that really?
So what it is really is showing owners how to get to that big 3 to 5 year picture. What does that look like number-wise? How do you hire that person that you need to expand your business? Where does that money come from? How do you know it's the right time? How do you know it's the right place? And a lot of what we teach people is mitigating risk, because there's risk in every decision you make. Mitigating risk doesn't mean all the risk goes away. It just means you understand what are the implications if something goes wrong with this decision. What are the implications if it goes incredibly right? So you've got to have both scenarios so you can make informed decisions.
Yeah, as you said, there's risks in any decision. So if I hire that person now, what's the risk? Or if I don't hire an expert in that field, what's the risk? And trying to outline the timing. So if I'm a small business owner, I think that sounds amazing. Sign me up. But what are the types of businesses you like? If the typical who comes to you and says, man, Debi, we need the help of you and your team. What does that look like? Is it certain industries? Is it a timeline where they've been in business 3 years and now they need help?
So typically we work with established businesses that want to scale, that are having trouble pushing a glass ceiling. Maybe it's 6 digits, 7 digits, 8 digits. They're trying to break that ceiling and get to where they want to go. And so we come in with a different lens because many of our CFOs have worked in all different kinds of industries. And we'll get requests, do you have somebody that's worked in my industry? And when I sit down and talk to owners, I tell them, you really don't want that. And they're like, what? Well, if you look at how big companies are successful, and I love to share this example, McDonald's, to deliver food faster, didn't go to the restaurant industry. They went to a logistics company and studied their logistics, how those things worked. That's how they sped up their delivery. So when you have somebody come in that has all this varied industry experience, they can come in and do best practices that they've seen in other industries that may relate to yours. But what that requires is an open mindset. So a lot of times what we find is businesses and business owners need to learn to look at things differently because the things they've been doing aren't getting them to where they want to go. So we're a change agent, and that can be hard sometimes.
So it's those companies that have been pushing up against a ceiling, but also those owners or top level leaders who are really ready and open to hearing new ideas and input from others.
Yeah. And so we actually are part of their team. So we'll do their weekly meetings with them. Our CFOs will actually sit in there, talk about what are the implications of some of the ideas. What's the work we're going to do behind the scenes to get more information for them about what it is they're trying to do. Are they trying to do a new line? Are they having trouble with profitability with one of their clients? What are the things they're looking to do? So we do those weekly meetings with them because it's a great value to the owner to make sure that numbers are behind what they're doing. And some owners may be going, oh my gosh, I don't even look at my numbers. What is she talking about? Numbers on a weekly basis? That sounds scary, right? But what we do is we create metric boards for not just the owners, but every employee in the company. Because when you think about it, every employee in your company contributes to your company. That doesn't mean we give each employee 5 metrics. It's what's the one number that person on the floor or the person delivering your work can be responsible for and have ownership of, that they know how they're doing and are they winning the game for the company and for themselves.
Wow. From a just strip away numbers and businesses and profitability, we won't, because we'll come back to that. But if you think about just life in general, leadership, achieving goals and success, it's getting the buy-in of everyone on the team, setting those specific guidelines or goals, and then giving them they have the expertise already, so give them the autonomy to succeed and give their input to the success of the company. My guess is that's pretty new.
Yeah, it is. It's been around for a long time. You may have heard of something called EOS. We're an EOS company. We work with a lot of EOS companies. We take that same framework and work with companies that don't do EOS because I think there's so many things in EOS that are great. For people that don't know, it's called Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's a way to help companies scale. So there's a weekly scorecard, you have weekly meetings, your executives meet with team members get feedback. There's a lot of emphasis on employees. And I remember when I first started working in this field, somebody said to me, they go, Debbie, I don't understand why you need to meet to our employees and talk to our employees. You just do numbers. Well, guess who creates all your numbers? It's your employees, their productivity, their happiness level. Gallup just got done with their survey for 2022. And do you know what impact culture has on profitability if you're a successful company and have a great company culture?
Gosh, no, but I'm going to guess now it's really high.
25% better profitability in companies that have great employee cultures. 25% better profitability.
And some companies are just hoping to increase 10% by doing these things outside the norm, where if they focused internally, they could more than double that goal.
It's true, because when you have happy employees make your customers happy. Happy employees want to invite other people to come work at their company. Happy employees want to share their ideas to make the company better. All of a sudden, you've created this culture where people want to contribute, and that's the reason we do what we do. So somebody asked me one time, why did I want to start my company? And part of it was because of my grandfather. He was in World War II, got out of the war, decided he was going to be a plumber, looked around and said, I can run my own plumbing business. He had a couple guys working for him, retired when he was 62. We thought he was set for life. What we didn't know was my grandfather rarely filed a tax return. When he did file a tax return, he didn't make any money or it was zero. When you're a sole proprietor, your Social Security payment is based on the income that you report. So think about that. He wasn't reporting any income. Not only that, when he retired, he had a cottage on the lake, he owned his own shop, and he owned their home. And his retirement plan was he was going to live on Social Security and die by age 65. And so for younger audience out there, just to explain what that means, he grew up in the Depression. He was a child of the Depression. And when men retired, they literally did die at 65. It was before we had all this great medical care. My grandfather lived to 82 and became a ward of the state on Medicaid because he didn't have any other options. He lost everything he had worked for in his entire life, this big, strong, proud man. And so I started my business during the pandemic because I didn't want that to happen to anybody else like it did to my grandfather.
Wow. That's a great story. I mean, you're right on all those counts. And that's what I do for my day job outside of this podcast is try to help people, support themselves longer than they think they're going to need to. Before your current company, what were you doing? I know we've connected on financial panels before because we both have that background, but it's always been in that kind of accounting, numbers, business financials background, right?
Right. So I'm a little bit of an interesting person. I'll say that about myself. So I started in accounting in transportation, did that for 6 years while I was at a transportation company, moved up the ranks. The last 6 years I was there, I said, well, I'm bored with accounting. I want to go into operations. And I actually operated school bus contracts and paratransit contracts at a regional level for this company. So I got great operations experience. Then I said, well, I don't know if I like that. I think I'll go do financial services for a year. So I have the utmost respect for you. It's a very tough industry. I lasted 1 year, learned a lot, and said, no, thank you very much. I think I'll go back to accounting. And I joined this engineering firm in, I think it was 2000, and was with them through 2006. So I joined them, and 9/11 happened. They were a project company. So they did robots for Harley Davidson and medical rooms for GE. Well, capital projects dried up for a year and a half after 9/11. Nobody wanted to spend any money. So I went through 3 restructurings with them. The last restructuring we did, I had to restructure myself out. So
had to restructure yourself out.
I did. They couldn't afford me anymore. If they wanted to survive, and I tell business owners this all the time, sometimes you have to make some really tough decisions. You have to decide what talent makes sense so that your company can survive. So when I left, they were a $5 million company. We made all the tough decisions, decided who could stay, who could go, what was going to happen. He is a $35 million company today, because he had the courage to make those tough decisions. And it was time for us to move back to St. Louis. I was in Milwaukee. My husband wanted to get back to his mom and dad. They were older. My husband's older than me, and he was here for their life passings, and that was really important to him. So that's how I ended up back in St. Louis, was that really tough decision. And I went to work for Bunge for a while. I was part of a joint venture there and realized that wasn't my heart. My heart really was small business. So I always share those stories because I think we put so much pressure on young people to make a decision and, here's how your life's going to be. That's not it. It's a journey, and you should just make different choices and make those scary choices sometimes and try new things. Who cares if it doesn't work? It didn't work and you just move on.
And I think, especially nowadays, right, it's very unlikely that someone's going to stay in the same or similar role or department of our company, same industry. In fact, there's so many new industries popping up all the time that what I wrote was when you moved from accounting to operations. I'm sure for you, that was such a growth learning opportunity that had you just stayed in accounting, you wouldn't be able to do and build your business and help all these other businesses like you are today.
Yeah, it was a huge experience. It taught me so much about people, hiring. It was my first taste of real leadership, right? Leading people, leading teams. I remember one of the first things I corrected at one of the contracts I was working at is the mechanics and the office people would say, those drivers earned our paychecks. And I made them stop saying that. I said, you will say Larry by his name. You will respect these people. These people work really super hard to make sure that we all have a paycheck and deliver kids or pick up people with disabilities every single day. So I think, that type of leadership where you make sure that every person on the team gets the respect that they deserve. That the person cleaning your office is one of the most important people on your team because they make sure everybody's happy. And especially think about a school bus driver or somebody that drives, and what do they want when they get off that bus? They want a clean restroom, right?
Right.
Yeah. I've been on startups where I cleaned the restroom before the drivers got back because we hadn't hired the cleaning company yet, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And one of the upper guys said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Have you ever been on a bus?" "No." I said, "When you get off the bus, you want to use the restroom." And I said, "You want a clean restroom." "I never thought about it," he said. So think about those things. Talk to your employees, talk to your people, what's important.
So you don't have to have all the answers as a leader. What you do need, sounds like, is to be willing to ask questions of everyone involved.
What's important to them? If you had told me a bathroom was important to a driver, I wouldn't have known that unless I'd talked to them.
That we often on these podcasts and everybody we speak with talk about how leadership is something that must really be taught. So you take a great individual contributor, put them in leadership, and oftentimes, more times than not, without that leadership training. So how did you know to come in and make these changes? Like, we're going to call them by name. That just sounds so monumental, simple at the same time. And how'd you know to do that? Where did that idea come from?
Because my parents brought me up that way, that you treat people how you want to be treated. And it shouldn't matter what people do in life because everybody deserves to be treated with respect. And I think that's a life lesson for everyone, really. You're not above anybody else. I mean, everybody is here to do what they want to do. People want to have a happy life. And, when we formed our company in 2020, I originally thought, I had these big revenue goals. I had all these things I wanted to accomplish money-wise. And what I realized, it came down to one thing. And that's why I started with my grandpa's story. It's making sure that business owners are successful, because when they have successful employees. And when you have that echo cycle, people want to contribute to their communities. Business owners want to contribute to their communities. Their employees want to contribute to their communities. And then you have self-sustaining communities where people really care about each other. And I think it makes a huge difference how we treat people, what we say. Our words matter.
Is that early on in the podcast you said, I knew what I wanted? Sounds like you knew what you liked to do. You knew kind of your values. Is that why you do what you do, work with small businesses, beyond just I looked at a number today and we made a great decision?
It is. It really is. Because I think, business owners get so involved in the day-to-day. A lot of times they don't have that luxury of stepping out of the business. And that's what we allow them once a week. They are looking at big picture items. What are those big picture goals? What are the little things we can do in the next 7 days, in the next quarter, in the next year to help you get to those goals? It's so important to take that time out and make sure that you're accomplishing those things, and you have a whole team to do it. And when you let the team buy in with you, what your big picture vision is, like I shared my vision, it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, early on when you were describing how you come in and help companies, I don't know if it should be, but it was kind of surprising where, wow, you're with them every week. You're not coming in and doing analysis and saying, here's your report. Here are the changes we think you need to make. Now go make them. Good luck.
No, we help them do it. So, we help them figure out the right advisors to come. So one of the things we recommend, and this is mind-blowing for some business owners. So think about, they talk to their lawyer, they talk to their estate planner, they talk to their wealth manager, they talk to their accountant, all on one-on-one calls. that is a time waste. I recommend they get everybody in the room or on a Zoom, however they want to get together, one time a year. Reshare what the goals are for the year. You've got all your experts around the table now hearing directly how each expert is talking about how they're going to help. Saves so much time and so much wasted effort because now you've got everybody on your page on what you want to do. It's really valuable for business owners to do that once a year.
Especially that forward thinking. There's times where people come to us and say, okay, the laws are changing. I think I want to sell my business in the last 3 months of the year that we have. We need estate planners. We need to map out a plan. Like, how much do you even need to sell this for what are your goals? Do you know what your goals are? And probably a lot of that is helpful for these planners to hear is what is that 3-year timeline? What are some of the estate planning things we need to do ahead of time before you get too far down this path and we can't undo it?
Yeah, before we even take a client on, part of what we do is we do an hour strategy session with them to understand where are they going, what are they trying to accomplish, what do they want to do. And if you're listening to the podcast and go, well, I haven't thought about that in a long time, it's okay.
Right.
We just want you to start thinking at that higher level and figure out what is that going to be for you. And it changes over time. It's such a wonderful thing to watch owners really figure out where they are going and what they want to accomplish. So we sit in a really unusual position because we work ourselves out of a job if we've done it correctly. The lifetime value of our clients is typically 3 to 5 years because they've either hired their own CFO or they've done their exit plan or both. So, because you can do an exit plan and still have a business. And some owners are like, what do you mean? You just pay somebody else to run it for you. You can still reap all the benefits. You don't have to sell it to reap the benefits of your business. There's all kinds of ways to do it. We're there to help you accomplish however you see that for you.
Well, you mentioned you integrate the EOS, right? And I've heard it a lot, and I've heard some summaries of it before, but maybe there's others out there who are similar or have even heard about it less. What is that? Really, what is that, and how does it help companies? And then what additional layers do you bring in beyond that?
Yeah, so we've got some great implementers in town for EOS. Shay Peffley, Jeanette Wade, John Gross are just a few of the names. There's several here now. And they are what we call implementers. So implementers actually meet with you once a quarter to go through what your plans are, talk about issues and the things that have been happening in the company. EOS is a system that holds people accountable, make sure you've got the right people in the right seats, and make sure that you are accomplishing your goals every 7 days, 90 days, annually, 3 years, 10 years. What's that 10-year vision you have?
It's almost like I sit here and think a coach, a personal mentor coach you might have for your career, and just bringing that in. Now you're not meeting with them weekly or monthly, but bringing that in for the business side of things. And
it's like a quarterly checkup almost, right?
Yeah. And I would imagine for, life is crazy busy anyway, but especially for small business owners who are wearing many hats and hoping to grow out of some of those hats, but wearing many hats, that to have that accountability partner. And again, not only as to what you do, hey, we've got the ideas, go do it. Instead, I'm going to help you come in and implement it. That's got to be life-changing.
It is. It's really life-changing, and it's simple, but it's hard. Simple, but it's hard. And one of the things EOS really stresses is simplifying processes, making things simple as owners. Because remember, I'm an owner of my own business. We tend to complicate things, not on purpose, but we do. And I tell people I'm a recovering perfectionist and control freak. There's hope for everybody. EOS says get it 80% right and move on. It's done at 80%. I'm going to say that again. It's done at 80% because if you've covered the 80%, the other 20 will fix itself, and you need to make a decision and move on.
And isn't I'm recovering, rehabilitating myself, still learning perfectionist. That's, you go to school, A+ or A's. If you get anything wrong, you get all those red marks, and it's all about getting it perfect when life is so much, it's not necessarily the opposite, but it's not that hardcore, did I get the A+ perfectionism? And that's hard to shake, I think.
Yeah, we work with, it really is. We work with a lot of professional service companies. And the first thing we say to them is, your good is somebody else's great. And you've got to start teaching your employees good is good enough, because it is excellent work. It doesn't have to be perfect. And that's really one of the biggest things we see in productivity for professional services. Too long to complete a project because they're trying to get every single little thing right. And the person on the other side is never going to see the value in that. So it's like, get the big things right and then move on.
So if you are a business owner or you're moving forward in your career or whatever might be in front of you, know that perfection sometimes, just shoving the things into a closet really fast before you host that family party is good enough.
Yes.
Come back to it later. Not that I've ever done that.
Close the bedroom doors.
There you go. We can all learn from this, mostly me. And so I find it fascinating. What are some of the maybe biggest mistakes that you see business owners make, or ways they think about the financial side of profits and scaling business and cash flow?
So they should be looking at sales once a week. Sales pipeline is critical to any business. A sales pipeline, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't heard that term before, that is your golden book. That says, what sales do I have that are coming up I haven't closed on yet? What's the probability I'm going to close on those sales? That probability number is super important, because you need to make some decisions around that. If the probability of closing a sale is 50% or less, you probably shouldn't be spending a lot of time on it, because you are wasting time you could be spending on other opportunities. They may fit much better in what it is in what you do. So I always recommend, especially when you start building a sales team, or if you're still the salesperson, you've got to have that pipeline so people can do workforce planning. Your accountant knows what cash is possibly coming in the door. That is like one of the most important things that you can do. And there's so many softwares you can use now for a pipeline. There's limitless numbers out there. It's really important to get those numbers out of your head so people can see and use them and give you great advice. You want your team to be giving you advice about what they see, think, and do and can do about what you've got. So, I am an entrepreneur. So I have my weekly meetings with my team, and I come up with all kinds of ideas. And sometimes they're like, sorry, I don't think that should be this quarter, and here's why. And if you've got good team members, you need to listen to them. So, I know there's no owners out there that squirrel at all. And so if you have good team members, they can keep you from squirreling. It doesn't mean that idea doesn't get put on the back burner, or maybe you can do something with it later. But really listen to your team. That was my biggest lesson. I didn't have to have all the answers. I could give things to team members. They're not going to do it the way I do it, and that's okay. And I'm going to say that again, because I had a really hard time with that for a long time. They're not going to do it the way you do it, and that's okay, as long as it gets done.
That's important in business, in life, in marriage. It's okay if my husband doesn't do it exactly as I would do it. I mean, maybe my way is a little bit more right, but that's okay. He's in the room. I can say that. But I think, I don't want to say it was glossed over, but you mentioned I have a team who will speak up and share.
Right.
But it sounds like you've built that culture to where they feel safe to do that.
Yes. So here's some advice I would give you, because I told you I learned from failure. So if I'm giving you advice, it means I probably was doing it all wrong. Okay.
As many do, because this is not taught in school.
Right. So one of the things they don't teach you is old ideas can become new ideas. So maybe you have a team member. I share this example because I'm human, just like everybody else. Had a new team member, talked about doing client appreciation. I was in an EOS meeting. I read it out loud and said, oh, we don't want to do that. Didn't hear the idea, didn't listen to the idea. First time the team member had spoken. And I'm like, oh my Lord, I really just messed up. And so I looked up and I said, I am so sorry. I was thinking out loud And I realized, I said their name, I said that this is your first time contributing, and I didn't even hear your idea. I said, they used to have these things called VHS tapes where you could back them up and start over and erase what you said. And I would appreciate if you could take that visual for me and do that, and please tell me what it was you wanted to discuss. And she lit up and told me her idea, and it was an excellent idea. So as leaders, we've tried things sometimes, and we're like, when we hear it again, we'll say, oh, we've already done that. It could have been the wrong time, wrong person, wrong place. Hear the idea again with a new lens, and let somebody run with it. Because, gosh, we're not perfect. Maybe we weren't the right ones to do the idea.
Well, I'm sure not only you, well, first of all, I should say, wow, that's just powerful how you did that. As you said, she lit up, changed her, but anyone else in that room was impacted positively by that interaction. And I'm sure, again, as you said earlier, the people are important. Happy employees want to contribute. I have to imagine they were impacted too.
Yeah, well, they laughed, right? Because I had to break it. I was like, oh, my Lord, did I mess up, right? And I tell my owners not to do this all the time. And here I am. It was probably 6 months ago, I got to tell you. We're all human, right? And I was like, oh, my gosh, what did I just do? I torpedoed myself, right? Because when you tell employees no, or you say we've done it before, or you say a negative no, 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 no without hearing it out, all of a sudden you have nobody that wants to give you any ideas. You know how I learned that? Because I used to do that, right? I was just as guilty as other people. And so I believe a lot in reading, learning. I'm constantly learning about leadership. And I went to a conference and somebody talked about how we treat people and train people. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. I have to change that, right? And so it's really important how we react to what people tell us and say. They're constantly looking at us as leaders.
And we often, a lot of people come on the podcast, and I'm learning myself, sometimes that pause and that just slow down for a second can be so important, where you're thinking out loud, when if maybe you had just paused for a moment, let there be a little bit of silence. Okay, I'm thinking here, and then fill in.
Right.
Might be helpful, super helpful as a leader and a consultant who comes in with strategies.
Or sales. I had to learn to shut my mouth to sell. I always wanted to fill that silence. And it was one of the things I was doing wrong in my sales, because good sales, you know, it's about the other person sitting across from the table, and sometimes we don't give people time to think. And I had to learn to be really quiet so people could think. I kept trying to fill the void, and I was torpedoing myself because they had already bought and I was giving them reasons not to buy. I wasn't shutting up, right? So I'm surprised I'm in business today. I made so many mistakes.
Well, maybe that one, we are all going to make mistakes and we have to learn. And that goes back to your grit of
Right.
You have enough grit to keep going and be flexible and adjust when you need to.
Yeah, I started my first practice in 2016. I worked for a CFO company as a sole practitioner, and they told us it was 6 months, you know, until we would get our first client. I come home and tell my husband I'm going to do this. I'm the breadwinner. The W-2 was never going to go out on my own. And he's like, great, when's our first paycheck? I said, when I make my first sale. And he said, what? He goes, well, how's this going to work? I said, well, 6 months. They said 6 months. So, you know, I go out networking. I did it wrong. I'm collecting cards instead of getting to know people. I'm doing like all these things wrong. And I was smart enough to get a coach. They provided a coach. And so I start sharing what I'm doing, and I'm listening to the coach talk to me. The one thing I did do was go to everything I possibly could in St. Louis, like networking events. And I did get it eventually right. Got my first client 10 months later. Our budget was for 6 months. Got my first client 10 months later. But what had happened was I had learned how to give first during that time period, learned what networking events there were in town, learned how to connect people together. And I never made the conversations anymore about me and my business. I did those things, and naturally people want to help you back. So it was a really valuable lesson I learned. And I told you we had our first client in 10 months. Well, what happened was it just paid off. It was boom, boom, boom after that. We just picked up clients right away after that first client hurdle, and the practice took off. And then the pandemic hit in 2020. I lost a third of my clientele because, business owners were panicked. I reached out to several local banks in town for PPP money, and I called prior clients. I didn't care who you were. I was telling people how to get PPP and what to do and what banks were taking new clients. And I wasn't getting paid for it. And I realized my business model was wrong and that I wasn't working where I wanted to be anymore. And that's how Acumaxum was born, because I knew I wanted to impact more people. I could feel that when I was reaching out to old clients and people I knew and things I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to do business differently. And I wanted to do these scary things called employees so I could grow.
Well, and you were going through, we talk about scaling your business, growing. You wanted to help more people scale your business, adding employees, as you're advising other people to do now.
Right. And the practice I was in didn't allow you to have employees. So that's the reason I left. I just wanted to have a bigger impact in our community. Impact, you'll hear me talk about that a lot in community. And, you don't have to be a business owner to impact somebody's life. I mean, you smiling at somebody in the grocery store, you have no idea what their day was like or how they are. That simple act of smiling or telling somebody hello could just really have a big impact on them for the day.
Wow, it's so true. And I know for a long time, I think in my own life, I thought, well, I'm not important enough to really impact somebody's life. But it's those small little things that you just don't know until you put yourself out there in a positive way, and what that could lead to on so many different levels.
Yeah, so the story I've been sharing recently is, we're a CFO company. And so I told you, got this brilliant idea that we could also do bookkeeping. We did it for a year. One of my roles is, before we hire anybody, they have to be happy. We hire happy people. What a crazy rule, right? I heard that from somebody and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. You should hire happy people. They're going to be great at your work. Well, I was taking my happy people and making them miserable. This work was non-rewarding. This work was not profitable. I spent a year trying to fix it. And finally, I had to admit we were no good at it. We weren't making money, and I had to let it go. That's really hard. It took me 12 months to let it go. And it's really important when things aren't working to acknowledge it as a business owner and let it go before it's devastating to your business. And people are like, oh, that had to be easy. No, we were known for doing bookkeeping. I am turning down cash flow. We have let this business go because we know CFO services are the right services for us. So in 2022 we grew. 2023, we stayed the same. We rebuilt. And so scaling businesses, it's really typical. You'll have a year where you've got to do a rebuild and you've got to look at things differently, and it's okay. You don't have to grow every single year. Yes, your accountant, CFO just said that.
It's on record.
It's on record,
We
right?
can rewind the VHS tape and go back and
That's
see
correct.
it if we
That's
need
correct. It's a very natural part of the cycle, where you've got to retool sometimes and figure out what you're really best at. And once you find that and focus on that, your business will take off.
And doesn't that, 2 points, and my husband's going to kill me because he hates when I do 2 points at one time. One, I think leadership, life, business is like leadership is like life at home. So if there's something that's no longer serving you or working for you or a person, it's okay to let go and move on. And the other piece you just mentioned there was focusing on what you do really well. So I feel like we get out of school or we're in school or whatever, and to be successful, you have to do all of these things really great, and you're going to scale your business and you're going to make more money and be more profitable if you can do all these things. However, if you can find that niche and what lights you up and you're really good at, it sounds counterintuitive, but you'll end up being happier, more successful if you can scale back.
It's true. When you are more focused it's more rewarding for your team members too, because you're not squirreling and saying you can do everything, because you can't do everything. You know, you may not have the processes set up. You've got to talk to the team when you want to start something new. You really, really do, because it has a huge impact on them and their lives, not just their work lives, but in some cases their personal lives if it requires more time to fix. So it's really important to have their buy-in. So that's why I think those weekly meetings are so important, because I'm an overachiever. And so, you know, I'll try to do too many projects in a quarter and they'll look at me and they'll go, I think that's a next quarter thing. Okay.
Shucks. Well, and something, and we were preparing for today that you shared that I thought, again, as a leader, you are being very open and very aware of your mistakes and how you impact others. But you had mentioned not only how to let business lines go, but piling too much on your employees. And then as we talked earlier, they're not performing well. They're not showing up as their best. It's got to be challenging to dance around and know when that happens. I mean, it sounds like that happened to you. Do you have a story or an instance where you finally realized, or it blew up to the surface?
Yeah. So, you know, when you hire your first employees, small business owners will say all the time, well, they have to wear many hats. They have to wear many hats. Well, that may be true, but you can't expect them to be good at all the hats. People are normally good at 3 to 5 things, 5 max. I mean, 3 things most, right? And as a small business owner, when you're growing, you keep asking people if they can do more, and they will, if they love you, they will always say yes, whether it's in their sphere of influence or not. And so I had an employee this was happening with, and they kept saying yes, but they weren't good at some of the things I needed them to do. And I realized all of a sudden it wasn't their fault, it was my fault. I was asking them to do things that were no longer in their sphere of influence and things they were good at. And so I had to find other people to do that and get them back to what they were great at performing. So sometimes we torpedo, I think is the word I'm looking for, our own employees. And so part of EOS is having weekly meetings to talk about what's going right and what's not going right. It's not your meeting. It's like a 10, 15-minute meeting. You get together with each one of your direct reports and you're like, what went well for the week? And they share that. And then you ask them, what do you think could have gone better for the week? So you don't ask them what went wrong. What do you think could have gone better? So they're more willing to share. And then what do you need from me? What tools, what things do you need from me to do your job better? Those 3 questions are pretty amazing.
When I think to, some people might sit back and say, okay, Debbie, that employee who kept taking it on and it wasn't in their sphere, I mean, that's their fault. They should have spoken up. What do you say to that?
What I say to that is high performers and people want to please you as a leader will not speak up when things aren't going right because they think it means they're failing. Now, are they failing? Yes, but they think the failure means that you're not going to like them anymore. They can't be an employee anymore. There's all this baggage that comes with failure, which is why I talk about it a lot, because you to grow, you've got to allow people to fail. That weekly meeting allows them the space to say what's not working. And they've got to own up to it. And it's okay, because then you can work on it together and decide, is that in their sphere of influence or isn't it?
And probably they've heard it before. The person didn't really mean it. They spoke up and they got bit. So they probably need to hear it from you many times before they realize, oh, she really means she wants to know this stuff. This is for real. I can open up.
Remember, when we learn, we've got to hear something 7 to 10 times before it takes. So as leaders, that's very annoying. You want to tell people something one time and get it done. And why do I have to repeat myself? What is going on there, right? Okay, that's not how we learn. It's not. We've got to hear it 7 to 10 times. So when you're mad at Joey because he didn't do what you asked him to do and it's something new, it's probably because he only heard it one time. And remember, people are interpreting what you're saying. And so we all interpret things differently. So you got to have a discussion with people to make sure that they're actually understanding what it is that you need.
That's very important. Something I'm learning within the last few years is you may jump to the quick statement, but wow, there was so much thought prior to getting there. And often if you don't share that lead up or that behind the scenes thought, that's where miscommunication, stories, people will write their own stories about what's going on. And that leads to issues versus had you just been mindful to share all that information leading into it.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, they're a CFO company and all they've done is talk about people, there are 3 things that impact your bottom line the most, I think. One is that sales pipeline that I talked about, really important tool. The second is your pricing and how does your pricing work in your business. You should be doing price increases every single year. Price increases every single year. Your vendors do not ask you if it's okay for a price increase. They just tell you what it is and expect you to pay it. That's how you should handle your business. You tell people what it is and expect them to pay it. If your price is really out of whack, you adjust it for new clients and you grandfather your old clients so you don't lose them. There's pricing strategies. And then the other thing is productivity. Productivity is all about your people. Your people control your profits. I want to say that again. Your people control your profits. How happy they are, how productive they are, what their work looks like, their work-life balance. It all impacts how they perform for you and how they perform for the company. People are an incredibly important part of your profitability. Remember that first statistic we started with? That employee culture, 25% better profitability. A lot of things we talk about deal with people.
It's so true. People talk about, okay, well, if I put these things in place, they'll be happy. But it's actually, that's probably the wrong way. I'm imposing what I think you want.
Exactly. When the pressure came off of me is when, so our team's all remote. So we'll do quarterly events and I stopped planning them. I said, who on the team wants to plan the quarterly event? And you know what happened? They got events they liked.
So sometimes we think as the leader, again, we need to have all the answers. We need to be coming up with these things. And then we probably hem and haw over, I've got to make this perfect. When if we just handed it over to the people we want to impact by that activity anyway,
right,
then it's better.
Yeah, your people show up in your numbers. Your people show up in your balance sheet. Your people show up in your profitability. Your people show up in your cash flow. So we do all those reports and forecasts and all those number things, but it's the things behind the scenes that our team helps you think about and what the impact is on your numbers.
So thinking about all that you do internally and externally, the company, do you have a favorite, story that we change names or we don't tell names of you guys coming into a company and making significant change?
Yeah, we had a company that was five-year company, and they shared what their goals were, and three leaders on this team, excellent team, and we're making great progress, but they got stuck. And so about 2.5 years ago, I said, I want to introduce you to this concept called EOS. And they went with an integrator, started EOS, and the company has 3 times where they were. 3 times. Because that system worked so well for them. And we actually sit in, like I said, that weekly meeting in the finance seat. And they're now going to graduate from us. And so we're very excited for them. Because our job isn't to stay there forever. Our job is to help people learn the things that make their company tick over time, how to look at it with a really good lens because things change over time, and then how to make sure that they're staying, competitive in the market, pricing, does their budget make sense? Does their people count make sense? Tech is a huge part of what we do. We're not a tech company, but we want to make sure that people are using tech to their advantage so that people can do the meaningful work, right? So when you think about your employees, you don't want them doing all the data entry and stuff. You want them to be able to do the meaningful, rewarding work. Because people are like, oh, accountants and CFOs, they're going to be antiques. And it's like, no, have you watched Star Trek and all of these space age shows? We're going to take the data and be able to give you so many more ideas because now we don't have to do all that data anymore with the AI. So, this is a really exciting time for this field.
Yeah, with the AI, all the different software and the reporting and the different way to flip numbers and analysis to look at it in a different way. And what you were just bringing in with that story goes back to something you said early on sounds like one, when you talked about McDonald's, coming in with somebody on the outside who may have different ways of thinking about the business to truly propel over that glass ceiling. So bringing in ideas from places that you probably never would have thought of to help yourself, and having to have that open mindset of we're here to learn and see how we can get better, not we know everything and have all the answers.
Right. Because Lord knows I don't know everything.
And that's often, you don't hear those things from, leaders, people in high positions. Again, we've been told we need to have all the answers, or at least appear or look like we have all the answers.
We have to lead. We don't have to have all the answers. We have to be good leaders and mentors for people. And I heard a really great concept, I think it was last Friday. Stop talking about training people. We lead, mentor, and invest in people. And I loved that. I was like, okay, I'm going to start saying that.
So stop training them. We lead, mentor, and invest in them.
Yeah. It's a different way to think.
And a different way to think about the process, but I think about the individuals as people and part of that.
Right. Different way to lead.
So Debi's and her team are doing all these amazing things for businesses out there, especially small businesses, which impact the community. How does Debi really get to where she is today? Looking back at, I hate to say little Debi because they make awesome snacks, but if we were to look at little Debi, did she know this?
No. When I was in college, I was majoring in marketing. And I am creative. I'm not as creative as these great marketing people, but the professor said, I'm 18 years old, and the professor's like, now, if you're in marketing, you're going to get fired at least 2 or 3 times in your career. And I immediately switched majors. I was very risk adverse. So I said, accounting, that'll be a really safe career. I'd never heard of layoffs or, any of that other stuff, right? I'm young. I was like, that'll be great. So I always thought I would be a W-2 person. I worked for small businesses. I'm like, I'm never doing that. I am never going to own my own business. That's just crazy town. It's so much work. What are these people thinking? I like to be an employee. And then this really weird thing happened in my career because I told you I was in transportation for 14 years. Well, my mentor there was really smart and knew about every 2 to 3 years I needed something different. And I worked really hard. So the promotions I got, I deserved. But I got moved around and learned new things a lot. That's why I lasted there so long. And so when I got out into the workforce, I was moving jobs every 2 to 3 years after I left the engineering firm. And my husband said something really interesting to me as I went to move the next time. He said, honey, you get them all fixed and then you go. And I stopped and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I like the strategy. And once everything's all fixed up, I'm ready for the next one. Where can I work that you do that? And that's where I found the sole proprietorship company with all the partners that did CFO work. And when I came home and told him I was going to do that, he's like, have you lost your mind?
Well,
now he thinks it's a great decision, right? Things have come a long way since those early days, but that was like the only time in our marriage besides plumbing that we ever fought. 2 major fights. Plumbing one time and this.
Yeah, any housework, things like that, that'll do it for sure. Well, that's interesting because he was almost the igniter of...
He ignited it and had no idea that it was all his fault. Because I was in my early 50s by then, and it's hard to move around every 2 to 3 years when you get older. And, I really didn't want to start over all the time either. I was like, what can I use this skill set for? And so that's how this whole crazy business got born. It was all his fault.
At least you can go back to that because, like you said, I'm sure that was an interesting conversation to have. I don't know. You can paint the picture. Come home. All right, dear. Here's my plan. I mean, how did that go?
And then he said, "No, you're not doing that." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Our marriage is not yeses and nos. We've never said that to each other, right?" And so, 2 weeks later, I came home and I go, "By the way, I quit my job, and here's, what we're doing." And he's like, "What?" So it was a little tense in my house for, a little bit.
Now it's, that's a pretty daring, brave, courageous, I don't know.
Well,
for some, they might think that's very brave, courageous thing to do.
I listen to the morning news every single day. And I had been working with a company for a year. It was international, helped them set up an office in Macedonia. I was working 80-hour weeks. It was crazy, I loved it, but you can only sustain that for so long. And I was like, one of the things I wanted to share today is I remember when I got my first CFO position, I thought I was going to be meeting all these brilliant people. And not that the people weren't great. They were great, but they weren't any smarter than I was. They're just ordinary people at the C-suite level. I don't know why we build up these pictures, right, that they're going to be, I don't know, amazing or, you're going to learn all this stuff. You do learn, but it's not what you think. And I remember being a little disappointed when I got promoted. And I thought, well, they're just ordinary people. And then I was like, oh, they're ordinary people. And then it just went down this whole other train. So I'm listening to this to get back to the CBS News story so you understand. They're talking about 80-year-olds, people that are having their 80th birthdays. And they said, what's your biggest regret? And they said, the road's not traveled. Mm. And I was like, whoa, because I'm in my early 50s. And I'm like, do I want regrets or don't I? I think it's time I start taking some calculated risks. And that's what I did. I stepped off the cliff. I'm an accountant. We were like, facts, black and white. There is not a lot of gray, right?
I need to know the next 5 steps.
I need to know the next 5 steps before I take these steps. And no, I just walked right off the cliff. And I test as a maverick. So I had been holding down this maverick for 53 years. And I let her loose. And some great things happened.
Why do you think you held back that maverick for so long?
Security, comfort. I had a young family at the time. And, my son, when we started all this, he was probably a junior in high school. So I just felt like the family was in a really good place because I knew there was going to be a lot of time devoted to this. It wasn't going to be the same, right? There's a lot of things you need to do to get things started. And I just felt like everybody was in a good place and it was finally time for me to be able to go do this. And my husband is highly risk adverse. So I knew his answer, no matter when I said this, was going to be no, right? Which is funny because he's run his own sole proprietorship for years. But it was funny when I said, nope, we're both going to be doing that now. He's like, what? So I think, I finally just said, do it. It was fear. I mean, it was all fear-based, right? I was just fearful to step over the line. And then once I stepped over the first line, it got easier.
We were talking, I don't know if it's this one or another podcast, so many of them run together. It's if you want to go from here to here, you won't because that seems so far and scary. But if you just start practicing the little steps over time, they're easier and more palatable.
They are. They really are. And so I tell people all the time, they're like, I don't have enough time to get things done. Take 15 minutes a day to devote to whatever it is you're trying to do. That 15 minutes, if it is super focused, you'll be surprised what you can get done in 15 minutes.
It kind of goes back to James Clear, right, in the Atomic Habits. If you can do a little bit each day, that consistency
pays
is
off.
Much better than I'm going to vote, a whole week to this versus that time over months, a year, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Your brain can take those little bites a lot better than those big, huge swing changes.
Well, I had written down logistics. That's, I would imagine, and I'm thinking, how did Debi get to who she is today? What did she experience and, maybe overcome, or the wins over the years? I would guess, seems like way back when, but logistics, probably you don't look like most of the people that were at your company at the time.
No, it was a very male-dominated industry. In fact, we're starting I'm actually sponsoring an anthology book that's coming out that we're going to be talking about soon, that talks about women of my generation and how we changed the narrative and didn't realize what we were doing.
Sometimes that's the best, easier way to you do more by not even being aware of what you're doing.
I've got guys telling me that transportation has a high divorce rate. I'm single, I'm in my early 20s. They're telling me it has a high divorce rate. I'm really sure I want to be in this industry. Things they would never say to another male. It was really funny. And I'd be like, what does this have to do with, what we need to get done right now? And you had to be pretty tough and wear a tough skin. And my boss called me in one day and he's like, you've got to be nicer to these guys to get done what you want to get done. And I looked at him and I said, if I'm nice, they're going to run over me with a 2x4 and smash me. I said, nice is not going to work here. I said, I'm very young, I'm a woman, and I'm dealing with older guys who just want to walk all over me. Nice isn't going to work. I just had to do what I had to do things. They were doing budgets. They'd never done them before. We were regional accountants. Nobody knew what the job was. So I kind of made my own career path at the company, which was really exciting and scary at the same time, right? So part of that maverick, I think, was satisfied during those 14 years I worked in transportation. I just didn't realize what was going on.
What'd your boss say when you explained it like that?
Well, I'd still like you to be a little nicer. Okay, I can move back a little bit, but not a ton. All right. So, it was such a great place to learn. We were buying companies. I was on the back ends of the buyouts doing conversions. We were setting up new locations. I went and helped them set up new locations and transportation facilities. It was an experience of a lifetime. And, this whole time you're dealing with a lot of male counterparts. Some of them respect you, some of them don't. And the ones that don't, you just learn to work around them. And I think it's a very similar story for women that are successful in my generation. If they, people would tell you no and you just didn't care, you would figure out a way to make it happen. And I learned that from my mom.
How did she teach you, or what was it?
My mom graduated college the same year I did. She was 44. I was 24. And she went and started a career at MetLife. Same thing. She was going to go work on commission. We all thought she was nuts. None of us supported her. I felt terrible after I started my own business. I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, I get it now. I'm so sorry. She was incredibly successful, made her leaders conferences every single year, except for 2. The first year she was in business, and the first year my dad moved her to New Jersey. Because in insurance, you start your whole book over when you move in a state. At least that's how Metropolitan Life worked back then. So she started with a new book. So imagine that. She started over twice in her career and still managed to do leaders conference every single year. It was amazing. She's a very amazing person. She's still with me today. But she was a huge role model. She never took no. And when somebody said she couldn't do something, her question back was, what can we do? And so I encourage people, when you hear that word no, ask another question. What can we do to make things happen?
That's great. You brought up earlier how when you're talking to your people, talk about what went well, what could have gone better, and what you need from me, or how can I help you? Those are questions. So don't let a door shut. Don't let you shut the door on yourself and you're thinking like, well, this is a no, it's not going to work. Ask, well, then what can we do? Or what more is there?
Right. Or open a different door and figure it out.
So don't just leave it like, well, that. There are times where you need to close a path, and that's fine. But there are times where you can say, well, how do we get around that, as you said? Like,
yes.
Or how do we open up a side door and get in. Don't let this just stop you.
Yeah, the world's full of no's. What does it take to get the yes? That's what you need to work on, not the no. Let the no go. Figure out where the yes is.
Let the no go. I like that. What do you think is useful skills, traits, ways of thinking to be able to do that?
So when you hear that no, just stop and think about, what does that really mean? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? So did you take too big of a bite? Do you got to step back a little bit and make a little detour to get to where you want to go? Who do you know in your network? So I got to tell you, when I watch programs, it makes me so crazy when people are like, I'm going to do it all on my own. That is not how the world works. Connections, networking, who you know, people want to help you. Give them that gift. Let people help you along the way. They want to give back to you. And that was a really hard thing for me to learn, that people wanted to help me and it was okay to let them help me and use connections to get things done. Because remember, I had given to them first. I started that in the podcast. And so let them give that gift back. It makes me crazy when I hear people say, I'm going to do it all on my own. Life is not a lonely journey. Let other people help you along the way.
And this is something I've struggled with too, because I feel like, especially women, moms, etc., you're supposed to take care of everyone and everything, and you're supposed to have all the answers. And so it's been a challenge to help others or ask for that help. But when you reframe it as, don't steal somebody's ability and joy from helping you, kind of changes the mindset on that.
It does, because I had to change my mindset. Remember, I told you, these are lessons I've learned along the way.
Almost forgot and don't want to forget, because you mentioned your soon, that new anthology with women sharing how we change the world without even knowing it. You've been a part of a lot of books and anthologies and sharing wisdom along the way. I know I can't list them all. I mean, I bet that as an accountant who's not the creative type, what's it like to write those books, do those things?
Well, I got to tell you, I always had a dream to write and be published. And so my dad was an engineer. And so when I told him I wanted to write, he's like, oh, that's amazing. You can write technical books. And I'm like, what?
Accounting
Technical
books. If anybody had questions out there, accounting books are not interesting.
No. I was like, oh, gross. So, but storytelling, I love to tell stories. And I was like, well, how can I do that? So anthologies are a great way to just put your foot in. It's a 1,500 normally to 2,000 word chapter to tell a story about yourself, about success in business. Is that what my new anthology is going to be about? They're business stories from business women that paved paths and didn't realize how they paved them for the younger generation. So I'm really excited about this project. It's a love project, because I'm always, how do we help people? How do we help people learn? And I just think it's very powerful for these women who are going to be able to share these business stories and the successful things that they've done. And we're going to do something a little unusual. We're going to have young people review it before the book comes out to get their comments and see what they think, because this really is for young women in their 20s and 30s that are just starting their careers or have questions about journeys, or maybe, need some advice about what they should do in certain situations. We've come a long way since I started business in 1984, but we still got a lot of things to do. And we need men to join this conversation. There's been such a long time where women only wanted women in the groups, but we're never going to change things unless we bring men to the table. And I think that also is a really important part of this next generation and what we need to do.
Agree with you 100%. I think if you look at history, it makes sense. All the seasons we were in of, fighting for just even a job, fighting for a high level job where one of us could get to, now I think we're in that phase of take out the negativity or the anger or the judgment and say, we're here where we are today. We've grown a lot. We want to keep growing. Now, how do we do it with joining forces and building it from a positive place and not a, victim mentality?
Right. And I think that's what's different about the women in these anthology books, because they did not allow themselves to be victims of this generation coming up. They found ways to make things happen. And I think that's how we change society. That's a society that we want. We're going to figure out ways to make things happen and to find new answers and solutions to our problems.
And I really think, again, I think I alluded to it earlier, business, personal life, leadership, success, it's all the same lessons and skills are needed across all of those to be the best you can be. And whether it's through the books or your business, or I know you speak a lot and you're on panels sharing your wisdom, to me, it comes back to Debi wanting to be constantly learning, helping people along the way, helping others learn, helping the small businesses, helping the community. It's from just a giving, you're networking, giving, helping others, that you can kind of see that same thread through it all in what you do.
And that's what I love to do. I love to help people. And so I just think the world's a better place when you help it be.
I cannot wrap up or summarize or do anything better than you just said. So for those who want to find you, look at all the books that chapters you've put out there, look at how you're helping other businesses, and or, hey, maybe we should work with Debi and her team. How can they reach out to you and find you everywhere?
Yeah, so you can go to our website. It's Acumaxum.com. That's Acumaxum. It's a made-up word. I made it up a long time ago, and we're actually going to get it trademarked so they can't make a drug or something out of it.
That does sound like it could be a drug. And you know what? As I'm sitting here, what a weird silliness of me not to ask earlier how Acumaxum came up. But I love it. I don't know how we're going to sidestep before we close out. You said it's just a made up word. Was that something tell me the story of, I'm sitting in a room and it pops in my head, or?
I was actually in a room. So we were on vacation with our very good friends. It was in June. And I'm telling my husband, oh, by the way, we're going on another journey. He's like, are we keeping clients? Yes, we have all our clients. Okay, cool. I don't care what you do. We're good. So, and I'm like, I got to come up with a name for this company. And I didn't want to use my name because, remember, I'm a change agent. So you've heard me go down these different journeys. And I'm like, well, I don't want to put what we do in the name because I may change, focus at some time. And so I'm like thinking about all these words like accurate and maxim. And, I'm just writing down all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. What if I took these two words, accurate and maxim, and created some silly word out of it? And that's how Acumaxum came about.
I love it. And thinking ahead to, I don't want to be pigeonholed by this name or this word because I'm probably going to change it up.
I have over time.
Which is good. You want to build something that's flexible. So we talked about finding you on LinkedIn, or at least the website, the company's website, but you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook,
yes,
Instagram,
yes,
all those social media places.
We are. So we're on all the social media places. You can call us if you want. We have an office in downtown St. Louis, right across from the ballpark stadium. We're in the Spark working place. I love Spark. I'll give them a plug here. They're amazing. And, you can email us. So there's a contact page on there. If you just want to contact us and talk more about something, we're happy to do that.
See, you can get two financial accounting people in a room and have some fun, define fun, but a lot of good conversation content. I think ideas on businesses, leadership, just being, and how you can help others. So I appreciate you coming and sharing so much insight and opening up and being honest. And I mean, hearing your stories as a leader who also wouldn't want to go work for you. So thank you, Debi, for coming and sharing with us today. I really appreciate all that you said today. So thank you.
Thank you. I was so excited to be on your podcast. I just think you have amazing leaders on here, and just to have the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with you today, I was so excited about it. So thank you so much.
Wow. Well, thank you for that feedback. It's appreciated, and hopefully something that comes out of today, I'm sure, will help somebody out there, business or person, on their journey.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.